In this episode of the Coaching Circle, we're going to be talking about how opening to the medicine of storytelling can heal. And I'm really excited for this conversation because every coach and wellbeing practitioner that I've ever met has a real life story of how they came about, wanting to help the people that they do. But for many, though, knowing or learning how to share that story or even having the courage to can be a real challenge. And so I am super excited for our guest today. Nikki Voxx believes the magic of conversation is real and that each unique voice is the cornerstone of facilitating healing, change, and transformation. And she calls herself the Podcasting Priestess, working with clients to connect more intimately with their audience via digital media marketing. She's got an extensive background in radio and she's a very passionate soul-led entrepreneur. And there's so much more I could share about Nikki's wealth of experience, but I'm going to give her the stage to share this story today. And so welcome to the Coaching Circle, Nikki Voxx.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love coming on and sharing the potency that storytelling can be, especially when it comes to, getting our message across as business owners.
Yeah, it's super exciting. This is something I'm really passionate about because, in NLP, there's a lot about language and telling metaphors and really the difference that you can make with people conversationally through stories. And so I'm really super excited to hear your take on this and how you've used it in your experience. So, Nikki, tell us a bit about, how did you come about or what led you to start your business? And, why is it really important to you about what it is that you do?
Now we're going back. How did I start my business? Oh, that's a really good question. I started my business through starting my own podcast, to be honest. Like you were alluding to before, I come from a background in radio. So I worked for commercial stations across South Australia and Victoria. And there I really got like a first-hand view around just how to present. I was a presenter and the power that conversation can make, right? And so from there, I became a mum and quickly became a single mum. My son was 5 weeks old when I parted ways with his dad. And so I really was lost and I felt completely fucking broken. And
Wow.
I was looking for a way to heal my brain, heal myself and feel connected again, I think, to this new identity that was forming, which I really wasn't sure about just yet, right? I always in motherhood, you walk into this forest and you can't ever go back the way that you came.
Yeah.
Forever change. And so I really needed women who had walked the path before me to share their wisdom and their, so that I could almost connect in with the power of their transformation. And so through that, I obviously was always really great at interviews and I knew I could start my own podcast. I wasn't resourced enough to sort of do months and months of therapy or anything like that. And I was like, well, I know what I can do. I can start my own podcast and have epic conversations with, other light beings. So that's what I did. I started my podcast and I spoke and reached out to women who inspired me, women who I knew would inspire others who were feeling like me. And slowly, bit by bit, I transformed myself through the power of conversation and helped, now I'm up to 14,000 downloads and 71 episodes later. And yeah, so from that, my business was born, really. But that's at the essence of everything I do is the power of conversation, because you can have, especially I feel like when you're in those moments of deep identity shift, right? Where you feel like you're not who you were, but you're not quite who you are wanting to be yet. And you're kind of in this void, right? You're in this space of needing to kind of hang on to or anchor to something that's bigger and more powerful than you. The power of conversation really helps us heal in those moments. We can have quick aha moments where someone will say something and you'll be like, oh, I've never thought about it like that. I've never seen it that way. And really, when we're growing and evolving, right, we're changing the lens that we see the world through. We're growing and evolving and up-leveling that, becoming the best version of ourselves. So So yeah, that's where the magic of conversation lies for me, and why I'm so passionate about it. I think there needs to be more women voices in media and in podcasting, and just in the world in general.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I love what you were saying there, Nikki, because a big drive around me launching this podcast, the Coaching Circle, is to get other people on who are coaching or they're in that space of businesses to share their stories, because it's like there's a big identity shift that happens when you start a business, whether it started happening before or during or whenever it is. And just being able to hear other people's experience and how they've gotten through it and the challenges that they have, it just makes, the journey so much easier for everyone, I think. So that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, like visually kind of look like it. I always look at it like there's someone always on the path ahead of you that can kind of hold the light, right? And then hand the baton back to you. And sometimes it's literally just like a quick, 10-minute conversation that you'll have someone with at a networking event or in a mastermind group, or listening to a podcast. You're listening to someone speak and you're like, yeah, you're just like, oh, I've never thought about it like that. And then it can kind of drop in. And then if it's resonant with you and you feel it as a truth in your body, then you kind of, go about sort of shifting everything internally and transforming into understanding that as a truth for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic. And so, I guess let's talk a little bit. I'd love to know, your take, Nikki, on, and because it's one thing where we're talking about these stories and how they're healing and those kinds of things, which is absolutely true. I love that. But how do we then kind of shift that into like a marketing perspective? Because this is one of the things that I've found, because I work with a lot of, especially female coaches and wellbeing practitioners that are moving from being in a job space to being in a business. And, some of the biggest obstacles they can have is around sales and marketing and seeming too salesy or doing all this kind of stuff. So what's your take on marketing and how you can use storytelling in a very authentic kind of way?
Mm-hmm. I don't know whether I don't want to get too woo, but the way that I find the easiest way to access it, right, is if you kind of sit down and you have like a meeting with your soul, right? You sit down and you don't have to do it that way. You can do it however you kind of get in touch with the essence of you. And I tell my clients all the time, sit down and you kind of map out like a timeline of your life, right? And if you've got, everyone has anchor points of the age that they were and a massive transformation or change period that they went through. And we have multiples in our lifetimes, right? And there's always something we believed before and then something we believe after that change, that shift point, right? Where it's almost like you're kind of upgrading. So if you get a piece of paper or you can get a mind map or however you want to do it, and you can even do it on your, on your laptop, on a Google Sheet or whatever, and you kind of map out, okay, this is a point where, for instance, me, when I had my son and I left his father, and that was a massive point of transformation for me. Another one would be when I started my business and the upgrades that I had to go through. And then you kind of identify the elements around that story, which are unique to you and what they taught you. So what was the life lesson that you learned? What was the belief that shifted? What was the circumstances? And I know I just want to kind of preface this by saying a lot of the things that kind of happen in people's lives, they can involve other people, right? So if you need to convey that story, but you need to de-identify people, de-identify them. Rather than them being an ex-husband or a best friend, they can be your sister's, like your sister's best friend or your cousin from another state or your auntie's. There's always ways that we can convey a story whilst kind of talking to the relationship, if it's dependent on a relationship between two people and what's happened there, or just to sort of get that across, because people learn through story. We learn so much more rather than giving someone a blueprint or a checklist or a roadmap, whatever. Those things we can intellectually understand, but there's a disconnect between intellectually understanding it and embodying that lesson and understanding it deeply. For instance, if we're having this podcast conversation and someone's listening to it, 10 different people can pick up 10 different things from this one conversation that we have through the power of story, through, you know, different ways that we're talking about dynamics and relationship and things that we've been through and all that kind of stuff. So that's why storytelling is really important, and to sort of identify those identity shifts and those transformation points in your life, so that then you kind of know the 3 or 4 dot points that you kind of want to transform into marketing messaging on your social media, on your podcast, on like being on a guest, whatever it is, whatever channel you're using, email marketing, just, you know, depends on what you kind of want to go for. And then around that, you can kind of then flesh out the story and tell the story, and you'll get better and better at telling the story and being more succinct and giving more context and clarity around that story the more that you do it. You know, none of us start off perfect. If you go back and listen to my first episode, it's shit. I was like very vulnerable, very raw, probably cried 5 times. Everyone's first is not the greatest. You know what I mean? We grow and evolve naturally over time. So that's my other advice, is just start. You know, you're never afraid to have a conversation in real life. So why would you be afraid to start telling your story, you know, in front of other people or for the benefit of other people? You know, it always comes back to me, the impact that you're going to make. And if you can change just one life, isn't that what we're all here for?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. Absolutely. And there's so much that I love about what you just spoke about then, because, you know, I know, like, and especially the de-identifying, right? Because yes, telling our own personal stories can really aid in you know, building rapport and those kinds of things as well. But sometimes you know, you don't want to make it all about you, or as well, you need to like remove, you know, identification from that. And this is the important thing about stories, right? Is like exactly what you said. It's mapping across what were the characters, what were the relationships, what were the learnings, you know, and then it leads to access of resources, right? Essentially, that's a metaphor. And so sometimes having it a little bit removed from you actually helps, because you're talking about embodying it, right? It's like the unconscious mind creating those connections rather than you doing it logically. So like, it makes so much sense. It's so good.
Yeah. And I just feel like as humans, we understand it so much better when it's told in story form, because we can always resonate with a particular person in the story or a particular aspect of it. Do you know what I mean? So that's why it serves so many more people when you tell a story rather than when you try to just give a fact, or, you know what I mean? I feel like when you can, especially in the medium of podcasting is built on intimacy. You are creating an intimate relationship with your audience because people are listening one at a time, right? And so in order for you to be able to do that effectively, you need to speak to an audience of one, and you need to, you know, share who you are. And by you expressing part of the experiences that you've had in your life, you attract the people that really need to be in your orbit and have, you know, want to learn the things that you have to teach. And then you repel the people who you can't serve, which is what we all want, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the biggest things that I work with some of my clients around as well, is that just being visible and showing up. But it's just like the people who don't like it or don't agree with you or whatever, they're not your clients. Like, don't even worry about them, right?
Yeah. Yes, 100%. And, you know, yes, obviously there's a big fear about being cancelled, and there's also a big fear about like people kind of saying negative comments to you online, but really, truly, like that is more about them than it is about you. And if you're triggering someone else, that is their story, you know, and it's not, you know, if someone's got nothing better to do than sit on freaking social media all day and write crap about someone, then, you know, like they're not in the arena with you. You're in the arena. You're going through the things. Your impact and your influence is bigger than that one person who has something to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? I think from my personal experience, I don't know, I'd love to know if you've had this, but I've found that actually going through the experience where someone talks negatively about you on social media, it gets rid of it as being a problem. Like I remember once I posted something on LinkedIn, and this person I've never met commented on there something about, it was just a quote by like Maya Angelou or something like that. And he started having a go at me about, I'm telling people how to think, and I don't have any real qualifications and all this kind of stuff, right? And I was just like, And like, first of all, I was kind of like, oh my God. And then I was like, who even is this person? And I literally said that to him. I'm like, hey, look, I'm not sure what you're basing this on because we've never met. I'm pretty sure none of my clients or students would agree with you, but you know what? All the best.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was gone and it was done and I didn't die.
Yes, I know. Isn't that the best lesson to learn?
Yeah.
Like when it's like your worst fear comes true and you're like, oh, I didn't die and it's okay. And it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, you can, and I feel like that almost gives you extra inner power too. And like, oh, I can do hard things, and it makes you more determined to show up in even bigger ways.
Yeah. And I think you learn to trust yourself in
100%.
how you will deal with that situation. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. This is so good, Nikki. I'd love to know, like, I mean, I know that you run some amazing programs and like I've like had heaps of your content that I've gone through. It's amazing. And I'll make sure there's some links to these things that you have out because your downloads and things are really cool. But I would love to know, like, do you have any really simple tips or thoughts around, if someone's going to be starting a podcast, like what are the things that they either need to get over or they can just get started with that is really easy?
The biggest thing I would say is that everyone hates their voice. So don't let that stop you. Everyone's scared of failure and has imposter syndrome come up and procrastinate. Like the amount of, you're an NLP practitioner, right? Like how much do you see your clients like all their stuff comes up, right? When they're like going through it. So when I work with clients and I do like my podcast in your pocket package, inevitably something will come up. They'll lose their voice, they'll get sick, their computer breaks down, their tech stops working, all of these circumstances so that they can work through all that fear, right? Because the fear is, oh my God, I'm sharing myself in this new way. I'm standing on my soapbox. People are going to shoot me down. Especially in Australia, we have that, like tall poppy syndrome kind of thing. Whereas, so what I really coach my clients is it's not about you. This is about the people that you're serving. This is about the message that you're sharing. When we go into that voice, that inner critic, we're making it about us. We're making it about what people think about us. Whereas I know it to be true for every single client of mine who has started a podcast. They're not starting the podcast for them. They're starting a podcast to get the message out there because this is free content that they wish they had access to when they started out or when they were in the shit or when they were whatever it is, whatever their business is. So my message is always like, just flip that script and think about, and later on in your podcasting journey, look, you're going to get messages and emails about like, oh my God, that episode changed my life. And that validation will be really important for you. Like I remember the first time a business coach, she was a money coach, reached out to me and she said that one of her clients, she passed on an episode and one of her clients had written one of my quotes like up on her wardrobe so she could read it every day. And that was like a huge moment of mine, right? And I was just like, that's exactly why I did it. When I felt completely broken and lost and I was a new mom and I didn't know what I was going to do or what was happening to me, right? I just knew that someone else would be feeling like me and I didn't want them to feel alone and I didn't want them to feel like they were the only ones. And so like, that's huge, right? And when you go back to, if you want to, in marketing speak, go back to your why. What's the impact that you want to make? Why are you doing this? And what is that giving you? Because that is the part that spurs you on to kind of be brave and take the step and go next level. What else would I say about starting a podcast? It's never about the tech. Like, you can literally start a podcast on your iPhone. Anchor is a really great free app you can use. If you are a startup and you have very little resources, Anchor's a free app that you can use and you can just use your iPhone to start it. Like they've got royalty-free music in there and all that kind of stuff. You can just put something together really quickly to get content out there. You'll never run out of content. It's another huge myth. I see people like, oh, what am I going to run out of things to say? Like my advice there is you never run out of conversations to have with people. You're never going to run out of content. And even if you do feel like you've done the content, there's going to be new people that come into your audience that need you to reiterate some things or to say it a different way. So that's also a big myth that I see. What else What else would I say?
I just want to say on, the first thing you said about people when they go to start and then, they have tech problems or they get sick or things happen, this happens all the time. Like I know, like I run NLP trainings, right? I certify coaches and I can train people to teach NLP. Like I've done that much training in this space. And when people are coming to do a training, they have so many fears about facing their own stuff, and if they will pass, and if they can pass the test, and if other people who will be there, and blah blah blah, that they create stuff, right? And I think it's really important to know this, because if you're a coach, if you're a wellbeing practitioner, if you're a trainer, if you're running programs, this happens. People create chaos in their life when they're fearful, right? And if this is you, no, it is not a sign that you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is the thing. People go, it must be a sign, right? No, it's a sign that you're fearful. That's all it's a sign of.
Yes, we are like meaning-making machines, and stop making it mean that you should stop, like that you shouldn't do it. Start making it mean that this is the breakthrough to my next level, and I'm looking fear in the face, and I'm not going to listen to you, and I'm going to like shut my ego up and keep going with my soul guidance. You know what I mean? Like with what you truly want. Like, because when you tune in to what you are, what it is that you want, like whatever goal that is, NLP training, starting a podcast, whatever, when you really tune into what you want, the fear voice disappears, and the strength to take the next step really does like pull, give you momentum to go forward. So yeah, we are making machines for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I heard that I always remember, which is really powerful, is danger is real, fear is not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's so simple.
Yeah.
If you're not in danger,
yeah,
you're going to be okay.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I used to, at this house that I used to live in with like a housemate before I had my son, I had this quote on our back kind of wall or whatever, and it said, fear is something like, fear is your way of knowing that you're going to the next level unless you're in physical danger. And I was like, that's, and I was listening to Amanda Francis today, and I love her. And she was talking about like our brains are they're wired to keep us safe, right? Like we need to have that wiring. So we don't make that bad either. We need that wiring to not walk down dark alleys or step out in front of a car when we're crossing a road or whatever it is. They're real life situations that we need that part of our brain for. And also a lot of the time, it's just a voice that's telling us to stay safe, and we can override that. It's a choice that we get to make,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and it is, we have fight and flight, right? That's our natural instincts that keep us safe. We have our intelligence that keeps us safe. Fear, kick it to the curb.
Yeah, definitely kick it to the curb.
Yeah.
We were talking about tips. Was there anything else? I feel like I was going to say one more, and now it's flown out of my head.
It's coming back to you, Nikki. I can hear it zooming back in.
Yeah. My advice would be, if you're nervous to start a podcast, the easiest way to do it is to interview. Do you know what I mean? Like interviewing it can be really good in terms of serving you to let go of that fear slowly and gently, because you're interacting with someone else while you're starting a podcast. And so you can interview people. And also from a strategic point of view, you're going to have someone who's sharing your podcast episodes, like if they're different interviews. So that's like probably my other biggest tip in terms of like, if you feel like, oh gosh, I don't know whether I could do all solo episodes, pepper a lot of interviews in there, and then just start off by doing a couple of little solo ones, and they don't have to be long. You don't have to do long episodes. You can do really short, snappy kind of episodes. It just depends on like what your kind of flow is. But my other advice is don't write it down and read it out. Just like hit record, and if you're doing it on Zoom and you're just doing a solo episode, turn the video off. That's what I love about podcasting the most out of anything, is because you don't have to have your hair done. You don't have to put a face on. You don't have to even be in normal clothes. You can be in your pajamas and roll out of bed and record an episode. And it can be the most gold content when you actually look like, I don't know what, a mum who's got, a little newborn baby. But like that's my advice, is just turn the video off and just record yourself, and don't listen to your voice back.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the 5th episode, I promise you'll find a groove. I promise you'll feel different about recording. It's just that 0 to 5 episodes that you feel like a bit clunky and a little bit awkward and you don't know whether you're doing it right, and all those kind of questions will come up, but you'll find your flow after episode 5 and it will start to feel good. You'll get natural inspiration and it will just start to flow. I promise you.
Amazing. Amazing. I love those tips. Well, this has been amazing, Nikki. And I would love to know, because, like I said, podcast is really about helping other people that are in business and working in the coaching space and stuff. And I would love to know, what has been your biggest challenge in business?
What's been my biggest challenge in business? Oh, there's like so many things. I think believing in myself, to be honest, and viewing, what's been my biggest challenge in business? Viewing the unique gifts and talents that I have as worthy, of, I remember starting out and thinking, like, doesn't everybody know how to do this? And coaches saying to me, like, no, Nikki, we don't know how to do this, and because I thought that I was like, how is someone going to pay me to do this? Doesn't everybody know? But like understanding and learning, all of my training in radio, my career in media, has all brought me to here, do you know, and plus my life experience. So yeah, I've got a really unique gifts and talents when it comes to presenting and podcasting and audio in general. And so I think, yeah, that's probably been my biggest challenge, is understanding that and really believing that, and then kind of up leveling my income, as I go, and healing my relationship with money. I'm going to be real, healing my relationship with money. I started my business because I needed flexibility. I was a single mom. I wanted to be there for every excursion and for school pick up and drop off. And this was the only way I could do it. So, I really had to stick my neck out and do things that made me feel deeply uncomfortable. Grow, I think aside from having kids, starting a business is the biggest personal development course you'll ever do.
Yes, 100%.
It's incredibly rewarding. And every day, I am thankful and celebrate the flexibility and the freedom that I have in my life, and that my days are my own, and that I do work that I deeply love, and that I feel like on purpose and in passion every single day.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I have to agree with you. I'm right there. Like when I started my business, I was a single mom, I left my job and went broke really quickly and was in panic and had to get another job and hated it. And did the whole thing and had to do a lot of work around my money story and sales and marketing and all that kind of stuff, So, I really believe that business is part of our spiritual journey, because, making money is very much around manifesting and creating in the physical realm, right? And the more people you help, the more money that you make, it's all part of that journey. So, I think if you're really invested in your own personal development, starting a business will put you in it and get you aware of stuff you didn't even know was going on.
100%. And I love that piece about, you kind of spoke to healing your nervous system, I think healing my nervous system is a really important part of me being able to open to receiving more income, and healing my relationship to money. And also I feel like it kind of accelerates, business accelerates, you almost have your identity kind of dies and you redo them over and over and over again, right? It's like having new babies. You become a new mom every time you have a new baby, it's kind of one of those things. And I think you need to have this willingness to, for it all to be burnt to the ground in the best possible way, although you're not starting at the beginning. I remember very vividly working with a coach last year, and she said to me, Nikki, if it all went away tomorrow, you wouldn't be starting from the beginning, and I'm getting goosebumps now, because you have gained so much knowledge and so many skills and so many, and there'll be different seasons of life where you need to do different things, right? I'm not saying my business is going to look like this forever, but I really think just be willing to in terms of, okay, now what do I want? That I got this, and I now where do I want to go? Now what do I want to heal? Now what do I want to look at? I think all of those things kind of serve you. And it's really about understanding that, I don't know about for you, but for me personally, especially tied into that money piece and pricing and sales, it was really about like me being deeply provided for and trusting that the universe had my back, and then also being able to do that for my clients. Like, no, I know that I can deliver. I deliver massive results, and yeah, I'm one of the best to work with. So
Yes, yeah,
but
yeah.
getting there is like it feels sticky, and it feels like, oh, sometimes like, oh, do I have to do this again?
Yeah. I saw, you know what? I saw this great thing. I've started following this guy called Danny Morell, I think his name is.
Yes, I love him.
Yeah. I've come across him, I'm sure, a while ago, but he's just come back into my kind of sphere. And he was saying, I watched this, I think it was on TikTok, and he said, like money is energy. Yes. He goes, and your energy, right? So that he goes, that means you are money.
Yes.
There is no separation. No. So you can't run stories about money being bad if you recognize that it's you, that you are money. And I was like, 100%. Oh, yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And sometimes, look, I think sometimes we can get caught up going from like a place of lack to like immediate overflow. Whereas I find if I can get to a place of neutrality, that neutrality deeply serves me. And sometimes I have to hang out there for a little while before then I can go into like the overflow. But I think neutralizing those things is like a huge part of growth, huge, and will serve you so well.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Nikki, I feel like we could talk for hours about this stuff. I'll have to get you on another time. But I would love to know, how can best people find you? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so I hang out a lot on Instagram at _Nikki Voxx _. You can, like, I've got heaps of free content there. I've got a couple of freebies that we'll have in the show notes. So there's a link to a podcast planner that's like super, like you said before, there's a lot of value in there. Like, it's not just like a couple of little things. There's like lots of resources, some videos, heaps of bonuses. And I'm really proud of that because I love that so much. If you're wanting to start a podcast, it's really the perfect place to start because it gets you to sit down and really think about and plan out and tap into your why around podcasting, so that when you have those moments of fear come up, you've already got that anchor that can kind of move you through and keep the momentum going. I love that offering, and it's free. So make sure that you use the code on the sales page. And as also, I'm giving you the guest speaker guide, which is another freebie I've got, which is all about if you're not ready to kind of dive in and start your own podcast yet, you can still leverage podcasts as a medium. So how do you like reach out and pitch to podcasts? How do you create a media kit and all that kind of stuff so that you can, spread the word that way? Because I feel like, I don't know about you, but like having conversations is so much easier than trying to like write sales posts and do salesy things. Whereas if I can show up and have a conversation heart to heart, soul to soul with someone, it's so much easier. So I always pick the easy route.
That path of least resistance. I love it. And look, definitely get around Nikki and her content. It is amazing. I'm, highly recommend that if you're interested in podcasting, check out, what she has there. She's a great source of information and knowledge and fun, and she's a pretty cool person as well. You can tell from this interview. So, speaking of which, Nikki, I would love to know because I know as a business owner myself for the last 8 years, and, other people that get deep into the business, it can become a whole focus of your life. So what do you do for fun, Nikki?
What do I do for fun? To be honest, I love getting out in nature. Like going for hikes and getting out in nature, either whether it's around I live by the River Torrens here down at Henley Beach. So I love walking around the river, or I love doing like the winter track at Waterfall Gully. That always it's a massive resetter for me, like sometimes I need a bit of time out, especially away from my computer, away from my phone. I think that can like deeply serve me for sure. What else do I do for fun? I love hanging out with my partner or my son. We did tree climb a couple of weeks ago. You want to talk about facing your fears? Oh my God, I hate them. And I was like, but it was good because I had my little boy there, he's 7, and I had to like show up and like show him like, we can do this. We can be fearful and do this. So I'm really proud of us for doing that because I was like, some of them are real high.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I had to go first because he was kind of watching me. So it was really cool. So yeah, like things like that. I think generally if I'm in nature, I'm a pretty happy soul as long as I've got my people around me. And that's not to say I don't love my alone time either. Sometimes it is Netflix and chill by myself with no one in the house and a bag of Maltesers just so I can get my sanity back.
Love it. Love it. Fantastic. Well, Nikki Voxx, thank you so much for coming on the Coaching Circle podcast. It's been great hearing all about your stories, and you've shared so much, great tips and wisdom and experience, and I really appreciate you being here. And of course, I'm going to put all the links to the things in the show notes for people to get around you. I look forward to seeing more of the amazing work you do.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really loved being here.
You're welcome.